Hello, everyone, and welcome to our panel, Extended Theater. This panel is the second panel in our program, VRHAM Forward. VRHAM Forward is a program that we have at VRHAM Festival this year, where we look at how extended realities like virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality are used in theater, performance, dance, and other performative practices. My name is Ulrich Schraut. I'm the artistic director of VRHAM Festival, and I'm your host tonight. So this panel is actually about how theater and performance institutions are using XR for their artistic practice. So what are the tools? How does it change the way we think about theater? And we have brought together some of the most cutting-edge thinkers in the field. We have Annette Mees from the Royal Opera House in London. We have Chiaki Soma from the Commons Theatre Festival in Tokyo. And we have András Siebold from the International Summer Festival Kampnagel in Hamburg. So I would take it away, Alexandra.
Thank you, Ulrich. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Welcome to VRHAM 2021. I am very delighted to have you all here. Let me start with a quick introduction, starting with Annette. Annette Mees, an award-winning artist, and the theatre director and head of audience labs at the Royal Opera House. And she has worked with partners across sectors including Google, Tate Britain, UK Parliament, European Space Agency, and these are just few on the long list. And next will be Chiaki Soma. Chiaki Soma. Am I pronouncing it correct? Thank you. She is the director of NPO Arts Common Tokyo and art producer. Chiaki was the first program director of Festival Tokyo, Japan's leading performing arts festival, and as well as the first director of Steep Slope Studio in Yokohama. So, and now András Siebold. He's a dramaturge, a curator, and the artistic director of the International Summer Festival at Kampnagel here in Hamburg. Welcome, everyone. How are you?
Hi.
Very well, thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us. It's great to get to know Annette and to see Chiaki again. We have been meeting a lot, but abroad and all over the world, and now we are cut off, of course, for some time. So it's wonderful to be back in touch.
Yeah.
Speaking of Chiaki, so would you maybe like to tell us a little bit more about what you're working currently at? Because I understand the Theatre Commons Tokyo has this year a very interesting theme. It's bodies in incubation, which sounds very interesting because we can all kind of relate to due to the, well, global, let me call it, situation.
Okay, can I share the screen to start?
Absolutely.
Okay. Oops. Okay, so thank you so much for this, wonderful talk session. I'm very honored to be here among you. And today, I just, to open the discussion, I just present, my former work at Theatre Commons Tokyo, for which I'm artistic director since 6 years. Okay, so so Theatre Commons is a transdisciplinary arts festival, and which exists since 2017. And so we present performing arts, or media arts, or visual arts, or workshop, or socially engaged art. Yeah, very mixed one. And this year we especially bring this theme, bodies in incubations, to respond the pandemic situation. Yeah, and maybe you can check our website, and we have a very long concept, etc. But today, and then we presented 4 productions, so which are in fact very different. Yeah. The first one is with Susan Kennedy. Maybe you may heard about this project a lot. I asked Susanne to create something with virtual reality technology, but she never done. So yeah, it was a big challenge for us to jump into this new venture, and she made amazing VR performance. So this was in the Gate Institute Tokyo, in their space. We separate 8 small booths, and so we host 8 audience who wear the Oculus Rift, and go to totally the universe of Suzanne. And the other one is more VR film directed by Tsai Min Lian, who is a kind of a master of new Taiwanese cinema. And this was totally film, so for let's say 1 hour. So we totally enter in the film world. So the actors, you can feel really the presence of actors so near. You can totally share the space and all feelings. But in fact you are absent in a way, because you don't see your own body in that space. So the presentation was like this in the small space that we have 16 audience, and each one wearing the headset, and it was something very funny. And we also created what we call interactive AR film, with a Japanese film director. So it was a mixture of AR and film. So the audience come to the space, which look like a house, and then, we can actually see the fragmentation of the film, which remind us some memories of the, protagonist, which may lived in that space. So it's, I think for this one would be between the film and the AR interaction. So, and I have also some more example, which are more, like performance with some audience together. And but it's also a mixture of AR, VR, and this one comes from the Prometheus, Bob Iskro. So I work as a dramaturg, and we really start from the text, but which become finally totally different. So maybe I can come back when I have more time, to share some thoughts, from this creation. But that, what we have done, lastly at the Theater Commons. Sorry, it was a bit long.
No, thank you very much. It gave us a very clear idea of what is happening at Theater Commons. How many people were actually able to view all this?
I think in total, 1,000 people, bought our, common pass. And with this common pass, you can, book any shows. But of course, we also sell the ticket, real participation ticket and remote participation ticket, as
Yes. Oh, great. I would love to actually, actually come in real life and view. Annette, András, have you ever been actually to Theater Commons in Japan?
But I'd love to. I think there's a real overlap in the work that Chiaki's trying to do in Tokyo and the kind of work that I'm developing in the UK. I think I wrote down the effect of aliveness is the thing that really stood out for me in your work. I think when we create here in Audience Labs and the wider context in which I create work, we often talk about shared experience and sort of the theatricality and about these new technologies as new kinds of stages rather than tools. It's really about finding how to create meaningful theatrical work that creates an experience for people that feels, we focus in on shared experience and sort of emotive and effective and impactful performance. And I think it's beautiful what you're doing. Lots in common.
Yeah, I have met Chiaki a few times, and I've been to Japan a few times, and I've been to the festival in Tokyo actually, when Chiaki was working there, but I haven't been to Theatre Commons because you started quite recently, Chiaki, right? You said 2017?
17,
or even,
yes, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's not even, it's 4 years ago already. I don't know when I was last in Japan. Yeah, it must have been 4 years ago. I think it was at the time when you started, but thanks for, I mean, it was a wonderful introduction actually into the subject, and it raises a lot of questions also. And what I found interesting is what you said about theater as actually the oldest and most powerful virtual reality machine, as you mentioned it, because it's true, that in theater, I mean, you are real and you imagine something, so theater makes you step into a virtual reality anyway. But what I was wondering is, isn't this also an argument against VR technologies, because theater has the skill to produce all that, on its own? Because I'm asking because that's a question that I ask myself a lot. Do we need these VR technologies? Isn't it frustrating to create something in theater, that you can do with the means of theater in different ways or more powerful? Or how do we incorporate these new technologies? Or is it just something that adds another technical possibility? That's what I'm asking. I would be curious what you would say to that. Sorry, Alexandra, for taking a question here. It's your...
Absolutely not a problem at all. It's a conversation between all of us. And I think I like actually the idea that this is something that triggers you as well. So it's better that it's coming from you than from me.
So I answer this question. Yeah, that's true that but I think actually the VR technology is still on the way to, maybe you have also experienced to wear the headset, which are very heavy, right? And not really comfortable. And but can you imagine if, the headset become like, your glass, and then more, something like smartphone, or you can use daily without any stress. Yeah, this can be more, open the new way to use this technology and apply in the so in the arts, I think. So of course, theater in the classical sense, it's gathering, physical gathering and physical encounter and physical conversation. But now, after pandemic, it's a good chance for everyone to update the notion of theater. Yeah. So of course, like from the ancient Greek theater, the basic idea of theater continue to will not change, but we can add a new value, and which is extend the notion of theater, like the main topic of this talk session. Sorry, maybe I it's not clear for your question, but
No, thank you for that point, because I understand that basically you do not feel that theater being extended in such a way is being a disadvantage for classical theater, which brings me to my question. Is it that you feel like you're struggling? Obviously, different times require new ideas. in terms of directly with the pandemic, and as response, one could understand your new ways. But do you actually feel like this is something I would like to take further? Or would you actually like to say, no, I prefer, as you, András, said, the classical way where we leave most of our imagination rather in our head, if you want to say so? Because Annette, for instance, I understand that you love to work with unusual collaborations. And I was actually wondering, what would be an unusual collaboration that you feel like this is what I would love to work with next and bring it onto a theater stage, which people would usually do not consider as an element for theater or an industry for theater?
It's a hard question. I would just like to hark back to that idea of the dichotomy between technology and live theatre, because I don't think there is a dichotomy. I think if you go back into theatre, the theatres and opera houses in London were the first place in London that had electricity, right? Because we could. Yeah. And I think what I'm really excited by is finding the edges and where we can bring theatre to, and how theatre can imagine the world in new ways. That doesn't mean it should replace or is somehow better as one person in a dark room talking to, like, that also exists and that also has value. For me, it's about expanding what is possible and expanding stages that theatre makers can work on. I think, immersive technology, it's not a question whether theatre should use it or, like, it's going to happen. It's happening. That world, that sort of hybrid world between the virtual and the real, the way that we live our lives is very different. I have my family in another country. We connect in space, but also across spaces. That's all happening. And I think for me, the question is, what's the role of theatre in that, rather than should we or should we not? It's not for everyone, and that's also great. Like, you shouldn't let me direct an Ibsen because it's not, like, it doesn't set my heart alight, right? It doesn't mean that I don't recognize it as beautiful and valuable and I want it to exist. For me, what's exciting about this realm is that it, per definition, asks us to think differently about our craft, and it asks us to think differently about what theatre is and what we bring as theatre makers to the world in general. And for me, that's where these cross collaborations come in, that you were just talking about. It's finding, I often talk about finding dance partners from different industries with different expertise and different skill sets that will help open up new ways of thinking about my craft as a director. And, I've just made a hyper reality opera, and that's inspiring for the creative team that we're working with, to go, oh my God, what happened? What is that? Like, we started making that well before the pandemic. And for us, it's like, if the audience can step into a real set with real, multi-sensory possibilities, but also a VR headset, which means that it's shared, but also anything is possible. What does that mean? How do we root it in the humanity? How do we create emotion? How do we do what theatre does so well, which is transport our imagination, but also, like, what is it? What can we lean into that virtual reality has to offer? That's really hard to achieve on stage. So for me, it's an extension of the possible, and new colors on the palette of the artists, which then also start, and new kinds of creative teams, which open up our imagination, really.
I like how you beautifully put this thing together, like in how do you call it, like this evangelists of when they talk about certain things. I actually really like this idea. When I see András, and I feel like, is he a bit skeptical or not skeptical? But if we think in terms of our target audiences, how taste and how later younger generation X, Y, Z, you name it, how do you feel in terms of it will affect a new audience, or even open up to an audience that maybe in the past hasn't been so receptive for theater? András, maybe?
I don't want to. I didn't want to sound skeptical. You know, I thought it's just interesting that Chiaki sort of made the comparison, or said that theater is actually an old virtual reality medium. And I thought, okay, you have that already in theater. You know, it was more this question. But for talking about audiences, I speak about the German-speaking region now in the last year, because what happened, of course, is that all theaters had to go online and started to develop online formats, digital formats in very short time, and try to still go on producing. You know, almost every theater in the German-speaking region, at least, has just continued to work, to rehearse, and so on. There were special rules, so we didn't stop working here, but productions just couldn't be shown. So there were some extra digital formats and performances. And what I think was visible is that there was a big frustration also with going online, and a big longing for being live again, maybe due to a kind of unprepared situation. Theaters are not really ready to go online. You know, they don't have film crews hired. There's a few theaters that have filmmakers in their ensembles or hired, like steady hired in Germany, but that's usually not the case. So it's missing staff to do so. And of course, you know, that's what I found interesting when what Chiaki said, that you are enhancing, empowering artists to work with these tools. I think that's also something, at least from my experience, that a lot of people are just starting to use these tools. We are really at the beginning, and maybe this is also why you can see a lot of crap around there, or not crap, but stuff that is clearly in development, that is not satisfying in a way. You know, a production is satisfied that is fully rehearsed and so on. So this kind of frustrating experience that a lot of people have had with digital experience, that led to a new hope for a live experience, is something maybe that we can overcome with more time. And for example, for the summer festival, we have now we are showing and co-producing the Susanna Kennedy piece, and we have thought a lot about how to incorporate digital formats, which are now existing and starting. And Hu Tsun-Yen, for example, another artist we have worked a lot with, you know, who has developed a few VR works. It's a super interesting way of combining visual art with storytelling and theater that Hu Tsun-Yen is doing, for example. There are very interesting examples, but we, for us, decided now to focus more on the live moment, because after the pandemic, that's actually, you know, the biggest challenge you can have, to bring back live again. And this is the last thing I'm saying, we are forced to think about the future of theater, because we are renovating the building of Kampnagel soon. We got some money from the state and the city of Hamburg to renovate the building, and we made a first sketch with architects, and we had to think a lot about spaces, what kind of theater spaces we need in 20, 30 years. And it was quite clear that we need a sort of digitally equipped space, because these formats, like Annette was saying, you know, it's evolving. There's more and more coming. So we need to also prepare ourselves, you know, we need to enhance people and empower people, but we also need to prepare for more proposals, I guess. And that's what's happening. But theaters are in the process of changing, of getting equipped first.
That was also, thank you very much, because I was actually going to ask you about the outlook of Kampnagel. So thank you very much for this one. And I was generally, it's very interesting to see you from the UK, Germany, Japan, to see that then also some sort of, let's say, how open are we to new things in terms of culturally as well? So what would you, because I was wondering, what have you noticed being the biggest challenge? András, you actually kind of mentioned exactly that maybe in some theater places it's like they are kind of being forced due to the situation to do things digitally and understand it rather as a must, or we have to, not as something that evolves as an as you beautifully and poetically said it, Annette, in terms of it grows together. So what would you consider individually as the biggest challenge with the extended theatre space?
I think what's complicated is that it's also young still, right? We are only making the first strides in what good art looks like in these stages. And I think in a weird way, COVID has complicated that, but because before COVID, people were like, oh, that's really interesting. That feels of something of the future. And we want to be part of that because it's an artistic, like I really talk about it as it's not technological exploration. What I do artistic exploration. How is this meaningful and beautiful, and what kind of art, performance, theatre experiences do we want to have with these possibilities, right? Before COVID, people saw that as something that felt very in the future, something that, yes, that is interesting, that is an interesting exploration, that is an interesting extension. And almost COVID has pushed it a little bit in the spotlight in a weird way, where people all of a sudden go, oh, can everyone do the theatre at home now? Which is a very different question than artistically exploring how we make great art with emerging technologies and new technologies and these new palettes. So I think for me, there is an obstacle in the right now about the conflation between commercialization, distribution, digital as the myth. I always talk about the mythical youth, and that this is often from more traditionally minded people who sort of go, oh, the young peoples will like this, which is again sort of a very, it's conflating so many things as if they are the same, or the same ambition, or the same thing that needs the same strategy, or that everyone feels like they need to do something right now, and preferably also tomorrow or yesterday, really. And I think that's a complex space to untangle for people, and to create space for artistry to emerge, for genuine exploration that leads to beautiful, meaningful art. I think creating that space is something that I'm really interested in, and doing that not in the silo of theatre, but bringing theatre to a much wider conversation. Like, so many people are trying to figure out how to have meaningful interactions and experiences in this new hybrid world we all live in. Like, theatre is not on its own, and it doesn't need to solve everything on its own. It can make friends with new kinds of people and go on that journey together. And I think so that sort of slightly theatre-centric model of we're at the heart of everything, and or that, is it live or is it new? It can be both. So I think for me the obstacle is both the conflation and sometimes sort of and untangling the silos.
Thank you very much. Chiaki, what would you say is the biggest difficulties, challenge that you face in Tokyo?
At the moment, I have a very good team. Yeah, so yeah, we can really make a good challenge. That's why actually we could also host Susanna Kennedy's new work, and see her team couldn't come to Japan. So we realized, world premiere without the physical presence of the artist, but it could, happen. So at the moment, of course, there is some, small trouble, etc. But technically speaking, I enjoy, that much. But just to answer the, András' questions, one thing that maybe I want to add, because virtual reality is a concept, right? Yeah, and but sorry, I was talking about the device, VR device, and this is something different. But actually, when we talk about the VR devices, this is something, like when projector appear in the history of theater, then we just add, and create something, more spectacular or something. So I think this would be just, kind of a new tool for making a new dramaturgy, right? I think now, we really specify VR technology, but I'm sure that it will become something more usual. Then we can, bring this technology into the, practice of creation, dramaturgy. Yeah, so that is, I think let's see in 10 years what will happen. Yeah, at the same time, VR and theater is something, who can help, mutually, more than, VR and film, I think. Because, because when we really, have a good VR production, our experience is not only the, optical one, it's more physical, experience. Yeah. And I totally agree with András that, I hate also online distribution of any theater production. I never seen, the streaming, never, in 5 minutes I get bored. But, why I investigate so much to the VR? Because VR can, the gathering, even small number of audience, 5, 10 to 10 people, as I showed in the picture. This could create the physical experience, even in the small groups. And also it can be something like a ritual. Yeah. Yeah, so it's really create the ritual aspect of the performance. Yeah, that's why I think, this can be the strong experience. Yeah, and also even in the totally virtual space, we can create a ritual, I believe. Yeah. At the moment, any technology is not really ready, so it's a very frustrating. But maybe in 20 years, when imagine that we can participate, in the virtual space, and really, feel sensation that we participate in the, physical gathering in virtual space. This could be possible, and then this could become a theatrical, practice, I think.
I think that's so right. I think because I think some people sometimes sort of go, but is it ready? Is it the same? Is it as good as something we've been doing in a similar way for the last 200 or 2000 years, depending on where you draw your lines? And no, it isn't. But also it's not going to become as good if we don't do the work, if we don't bring curiosity to this, if we don't bring our craft as theatre makers to these new possibilities, it will get filled with commercial tat. That will happen anyway. And I think for us, as a theatre community, bringing our craft, as Jackie says, I think I too believe that theatre maps onto immersive experience really well, because that's what we do. If we don't bring our curiosity and our skill set to it, it won't not exist. It will just not have a theatrical space in it. And I do think, the digital universe should have art and experience and public space and beauty in it, as much as it will have commerciality into it and private spaces. I feel like we don't need to replace, and not everyone has to do it, but as a community, having the curiosity in that crossover, I think, is super important, because that's the only way that we'll get to good art.
Thank you. These are actually very nice closing words, because we are already at the end of our time. It was actually really, really interesting to speak to you, especially from all the different points of view, which happen to be also from different parts of the world. So I hope we won't, or 20 years till we meet again and discuss the development. So it was lovely to have you all here. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much for joining in for our panel, Extended Theater. And thanks also to our panelists, Annette, Mees, Chiaki, Soma, and András, Siebold. For those of you who are interested in this kind of virtual reality performance and this new art form, we have a real-life virtual performance coming up in 25 minutes at 8 p.m. CEST. In our virtual venue, the choreographer from London, Alexander Whitley, will perform a new piece that is only done for virtual reality. He is going to be live in London and will be live streamed into our virtual venue. It's an experiment. Come by if you're interested in that, and we can't wait to see you there. Thanks very much.